Hello everyone, I'm Alex, and thank you for joining me today. Let me ask you something: how often do we find ourselves living for the expectations of others, forgetting the strength we hold within? Today, I bring you the story of Amelia Brooks, a tale that will not only resonate with your heart but remind you of a powerful truth: true strength is born not from pleasing others, but from believing in ourselves. Amelia's journey reminds us that true strength is born not from pleasing others, but from believing in ourselves. This is not just a story, it's a beacon of hope for anyone struggling to break free from the weight of others' expectations. So, sit back and let me take you through the inspiring journey of Amelia Brooks. It's a story of reclaiming power, embracing self-worth, and creating a future that belongs to no one else but you. Let's begin. The soft morning sunlight poured through the grand windows of an elegant hotel, casting a golden glow across polished marble floors and understated floral arrangements. The wedding reception was a picture of refined sophistication, classic, not ostentatious. Laughter mingled with the faint melody of a live string quartet, creating an inviting warmth despite the formal setting. Amelia Brooks stepped into the room alongside her husband, Ethan Carter, with a quiet yet undeniable presence. Her navy sheath dress, simple but impeccably tailored, exuded an elegance that stood in contrast to the sparkling gowns and tailored tuxedos surrounding her. She didn't seek attention, but she held it nonetheless. By her side, Ethan, a distinguished doctor and the heir to Carter Medical Group, radiated confidence and approachability. His calm demeanor and warm smile were magnetic, drawing friendly nods and greetings from those nearby. Leaning in, he whispered, "Are you okay?" His deep brown eyes searched hers, full of genuine concern. "I'm fine," Amelia replied with a soft smile, though a flicker of unease crossed her mind. This wasn't her world, not entirely. The polished faces, the muted yet palpable competitiveness of the crowd, it reminded her too much of a past she had fought hard to leave behind. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her back. "I need to catch up with a few colleagues. Why don't you find a quiet spot and relax for a bit? I won't be long." Amelia nodded, grateful for his thoughtfulness. She moved toward the terrace doors, drawn to the garden's tranquility visible just beyond. Breathing in deeply, she welcomed the brief reprieve. Yet, even as she sought the comfort of solitude, a shadow of dread crept into her heart. The past, she knew, had a way of showing up when least expected. Amelia stepped onto the hotel's garden terrace, letting the cool morning breeze wash over her. The soft murmur of conversations from the ballroom faded into the background as she took in the peaceful view of blooming flowers and neatly trimmed hedges. For a moment, she allowed herself to exhale, to loosen the tension that had crept into her shoulders. This was the life she had worked so hard to build, a life of stability and love, far removed from the chaos and judgment of her past. But just as the thought crossed her mind, an all-too-familiar voice shattered her moment of peace. "Well, look who decided to make an appearance," a sharp voice drawled behind her, dripping with disdain. Amelia froze. Her stomach twisted in recognition before she even turned around. Slowly, she faced the two women standing a few feet away. Margaret Brooks, her mother, stood stiff and regal in an emerald green gown, her diamond necklace catching the sunlight like a cold, unfeeling glare. Beside her, Sophia, Amelia's younger sister, wore a striking red dress that hugged her figure perfectly, her polished smile a mask for the venom in her eyes. "Amelia," Margaret said, her tone as cold as the wind. "I didn't think you'd show your face here. Then again, I suppose being married to Ethan Carter does have its perks. You've managed to sneak your way into circles you were never meant to be in." Sophia laughed softly, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. "Did Ethan drag you along, or did you beg him to bring you? I'm surprised you even know how to dress for an event like this." Amelia's pulse quickened, but she refused to let them see her falter. "I was invited," she replied evenly, her voice steady despite the anger bubbling beneath her calm exterior. "Ethan and I are here as guests of the groom." Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course, riding on your husband's coattails again. How else would you have made it through these doors? The words stung, but they were nothing new. Amelia had spent years building a shield against this kind of venom, though the cracks in that armor never fully disappeared. She took a deep breath, fixing her mother with a steady gaze. If you'll excuse me, I'd like to enjoy the garden. As she turned to walk away, Sophia's hand shot out, gripping Amelia's arm with surprising force. Don't walk away from me, Sophia hissed, her nails digging into Amelia's skin. We're not finished. Amelia yanked her arm free, her expression hardening. Let me go, Sophia, she said, her voice firm and low. This isn't the place for one of your scenes. Sophia's laugh was bitter, her voice rising enough to draw the attention of a few nearby guests. A scene? Oh, Amelia, you've already made yourself a spectacle just by showing up here. You don't belong in places like this. You never did. You're nothing but a disappointment. Amelia's jaw clenched, the words cutting deeper than she wanted to admit. But instead of retreating, she stood her ground. A disappointment, she repeated, her voice sharper now. You mean like when you both told me I was worthless? Or when you threw me out of the house with nothing? Don't act like you've ever been in my corner, Sophia. Or yours, mother. Margaret stepped forward, her expression darkening. Watch your tone, young lady, she snapped. We did everything for you. We gave you opportunities, support, everything you needed to succeed. You're the one who chose to throw it all away. Amelia's laughter was cold and short, filled with years of pent-up frustration. Everything you did for me, she said, her voice trembling with anger. You mean the constant criticism? The way you held Sophia up as your golden child while I was treated like an afterthought? You didn't help me. You pushed me away. And now that I've built something without you, you can't stand it. Sophia's polished facade cracked, and her voice rose. Built something? Don't make me laugh. You latched onto Ethan because you couldn't make it on your own. He's the only reason you're standing here, pretending to be something you're not. Amelia stepped closer, her gaze unyielding. You're right about one thing, Sophia, I didn't make it here alone. But it wasn't because of you, or Mom, or anyone else who spent their time tearing me down. It was because of Ethan, and the people who actually believed in me. And I won't apologize for that. Before Sophia could retort, a calm, steady voice cut through the tension. Amelia, Ethan said, his tone laced with concern as he approached. His tall frame and commanding presence seemed to shift the balance in the confrontation. Is everything okay here? Margaret and Sophia stiffened as Ethan's sharp gaze moved between them. Sophia quickly plastered on a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. Oh, Ethan, she said sweetly. We're just catching up with Amelia. Family, you know how it is. Ethan's expression didn't soften. Family, he repeated, his voice cool. Interesting choice of words. Amelia straightened, the weight of Ethan's presence giving her the confidence to say what she'd held back for years. They're no family of mine, she said, her voice steady and clear. Not anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret's face reddened, and Sophia's mouth opened as if to argue, but no words came out. Amelia turned to Ethan, nodding toward the exit. Let's go, she said firmly. With his hand gently resting on her back, Ethan guided her away, leaving Margaret and Sophia standing amidst the curious whispers of onlookers. Amelia didn't look back. For the first time, she felt truly in control, unburdened by their expectations or judgment. The past was no longer a weight she carried, it was a bridge she had finally burned. The hum of whispered conversations filled the grand ballroom as Amelia and Ethan re-entered from the terrace, their steps measured yet firm. Amelia's heart was still pounding from the confrontation, but Ethan's steady presence beside her anchored her. She felt the curious eyes of other guests following them, but she kept her head high. Just as they reached a quieter corner, a sharp voice broke through the din. Dr. Carter. Amelia froze as Sophia's voice carried across the room, dripping with exaggerated cheer. Turning slowly, she saw her sister approaching with a theatrical smile plastered on her face, Margaret trailing closely behind. Both women looked perfectly poised, their expensive gowns gleaming under the chandeliers. Yet, to Amelia, their polished exteriors couldn't hide the bitterness lurking beneath. Sophia stopped in front of Ethan, her hands clasped as though she were greeting royalty. "It's such a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Carter," she gushed. "I'm Sophia, Amelia's sister. I've heard so much about you." Ethan's expression remained polite but cool. "Nice to meet you," he said curtly, glancing at Amelia as if to gauge how she wanted to handle the situation. Amelia took a small step forward, her voice steady. "What do you want, Sophia?" "Oh, Amelia," Sophia replied, her tone falsely sweet. "Why so cold? We're family, after all. I just wanted to introduce myself to your husband. He deserves to know the real you." Amelia felt her stomach twist, but she didn't flinch. "Whatever you're trying to do, it won't work," she said quietly. "Not anymore." Sophia's smile faltered, and Margaret stepped in, her tone sharp. "Amelia, you've always had a flair for the dramatic. We're here to reconnect, not cause trouble. But let's be honest, Ethan deserves to know what he married into." Amelia's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing. "And what is that, exactly?" she asked, her voice calm but cutting. "A failure," Sophia interjected, her words laced with venom. "Someone who's always relied on others to clean up her messes. You've been riding Ethan's coattails just like you've always latched onto anyone who could carry you." The room seemed to grow quieter as nearby guests began to take notice. Amelia felt her breath catch, but before she could respond, Ethan's voice cut through the tension. "That's enough," he said firmly, stepping closer to Amelia. His gaze was cold as it locked onto Sophia and Margaret. "If you think you can undermine Amelia in front of me, you're mistaken. I know exactly who my wife is, and I couldn't be prouder of her." Sophia's face flushed, her composure cracking. "Do you, though?" she snapped. "Do you know how she left home? How she abandoned her family? She's been lying to you, Ethan. She's not who you think she is." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't waver. "I know exactly how Amelia left home," he said. "I know about the pain she endured, the way she was treated by the people who should have loved her most. And despite all of that, she's built a life full of integrity, love, and strength. None of which, I might add, came from either of you." Amelia's chest tightened, gratitude and pride swelling as Ethan continued. "Amelia doesn't owe you anything. If you came here to try and tear her down, you've already lost." The word struck like thunder, leaving Margaret and Sophia visibly shaken. Sophia opened her mouth to retort, but before she could speak, Amelia took a step forward. "You've spent years trying to make me feel small," she said, her voice steady and clear. "But you don't have that power over me anymore. I've built a life I'm proud of, with people who truly care about me. You don't get to take that away." Margaret's face reddened, and she hissed through gritted teeth, "You're embarrassing yourself, Amelia. This is not the place for this kind of behavior." Amelia laughed softly, the sound bitter yet freeing. "You're right about one thing, it's not the place. But if you wanted to avoid a scene, maybe you shouldn't have tried to provoke one. I've had enough of your games, and I won't play them anymore." The murmurs around them grew louder as the weight of Amelia's words sank in. For the first time, Margaret and Sophia looked genuinely uncertain, their usual confidence slipping under the gaze of onlookers. "Ethan," Amelia said, turning to her husband with a calm resolve, "I think it's time we left." Ethan nodded, placing a protective hand on her back as they turned to leave. Behind them, the ballroom buzzed with whispers, but Amelia didn't look back. With every step, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. This was her closure, the moment she reclaimed her power. As the doors closed behind them, Amelia exhaled deeply, the cool night air washing over her. "Did I do the right thing?" she asked softly, glancing at Ethan. Ethan's arm tightened around her. "You stood up for yourself," he said. "And that's always the right thing." Amelia smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time, she felt truly free. A year had passed since the fateful wedding confrontation, and life for Amelia Brooks had settled into a peaceful rhythm. On this crisp autumn morning, the sun streamed through the windows of her cozy home, casting a warm glow over the wooden floors and the framed family photos that lined the walls. Outside, the gentle rustling of leaves blended with the sound of her son's laughter as Liam chased after butterflies in the backyard. Amelia stood by the kitchen counter, sipping her coffee as she watched Ethan flip pancakes on the griddle, his effortless charm still making her smile after all these years. The scene was idyllic, almost unreal compared to the chaos of her past. Yet this life, this happiness, was entirely real, something she had fought for, something she had earned. "Mommy, look!" Liam called out, holding up a small flower he'd plucked from the garden. Amelia crouched down, taking the flower from his tiny hands and pulling him into a warm hug. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said softly, her heart swelling with gratitude. This was the family she had dreamed of, the one she had built through love, patience, and resilience. Her phone buzzed on the counter, breaking her reverie. Picking it up, she frowned at the name on the screen, Sophia. Her thumb hovered over the notification, her heart conflicted. It was a message, simple, yet heavy with meaning. "I'm sorry. Can we talk?" "What is it?" Ethan asked, noticing the change in her expression. Amelia hesitated before showing him the message. His brow furrowed as he read it, but his tone remained calm. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," she admitted, her voice thoughtful. "But maybe I need to hear her out." Later that week, Amelia sat at a small cafe table near the window, watching the world outside while waiting for Sophia to arrive. She had rehearsed this meeting in her mind countless times, imagining every possible scenario, but now that it was here, she felt an unexpected calm. This was no longer about anger or vindication, it was about closure. The cafe door opened, and Sophia stepped inside. Gone was the polished, arrogant woman from the wedding. Her once flawless hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her designer clothes had been replaced by an understated sweater and jeans. She looked tired, but there was something vulnerable in her demeanor, a crack in the armor she had worn for so long. "Hi," Sophia said softly as she approached the table. Amelia nodded. "Hi." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Finally, Sophia spoke, her voice trembling. "Thank you for meeting me. I wasn't sure you would." Amelia studied her sister's face, searching for sincerity. "Why did you want to meet?" she asked, her tone steady but guarded. Sophia's hands twisted together in her lap. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "For everything. For the way I treated you, for what I said at the wedding, for all of it. I was wrong, Amelia. I let jealousy and bitterness consume me, and I hurt you in ways I can never take back." Amelia felt a pang in her chest, a mixture of sadness and relief. She had waited years to hear those words, yet now that they were spoken, they didn't erase the pain of the past. "I appreciate your apology," she said carefully. "But it doesn't change what happened. You and Mom, you both made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I didn't matter. That's not something I can forget overnight." Sophia nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know," she whispered. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I needed to tell you that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm trying to change. For myself. For Ron, well, what's left of my life." Amelia leaned back in her chair, her gaze softening. "I hope you do," she said after a moment. But I can't carry this for you, Sophia. You need to figure it out on your own. Sophia managed a faint smile, her voice quiet but earnest. Thank you for listening. Back at home that evening, Amelia sat with Ethan on the couch, Liam fast asleep in his room. She recounted the meeting, her voice calm yet reflective. It felt freeing, in a way, she said. Not because she apologized, but because I realized I don't need her to. I've already let it go. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. You've come so far, Amelia, he said. I'm proud of you. She smiled, leaning into him. For the first time in a long time, I feel free, she said. Free to live my life without looking back. Outside, the night was quiet and still, the stars shining brightly above. Amelia closed her eyes, embracing the peace she had fought so hard to achieve. The past, once a weight she couldn't bear, was now just a memory, a chapter she had finally closed. A year had passed since the confrontation that changed everything, and Amelia Brooks had found herself not just moving on but truly healing. She stood on the porch of her home one bright summer morning, a cup of coffee warming her hands as the golden sunlight filtered through the trees. Her son, Liam, played in the yard, his laughter mingling with the sound of birds chirping, a melody of the life she had worked so hard to build. Ethan joined her, his arm brushing hers as he set down a plate of freshly baked muffins. You seem deep in thought, he said, his voice gentle. Amelia smiled, watching Liam attempt to catch a butterfly. I was just thinking about how far we've come, she said softly. All of this, it feels like a dream sometimes. Ethan leaned against the porch railing, his gaze following hers. It's not a dream, he said. It's what you've created. You've turned pain into something beautiful, Amelia. Don't forget that. Her smile widened, but her mind drifted back to the message she had received a few months ago from Sophia. It had been the start of something Amelia hadn't anticipated, a cautious but genuine reconnection. They hadn't become close, but the bitterness had faded, replaced by a fragile understanding. Sophia had started over, taking accountability for her past and making strides to rebuild her life. Margaret, however, remained distant. Amelia had chosen to let go of the relationship rather than continue to carry the weight of her mother's disapproval. It had been a difficult decision, but it was one that gave her peace. Not every bond could be mended, and Amelia had come to accept that. Later that day, Amelia sat at the kitchen table, sorting through old photographs. Liam joined her, his small hands pointing excitedly at a picture of Amelia as a child. Is that you, Mommy? He asked, his eyes wide. It is, Amelia said, her voice filled with a mixture of nostalgia and reflection. That was a long time ago. Were you happy? Liam asked innocently. The question caught her off guard. She paused before answering, her gaze softening as she looked at her son. Not always, she admitted. But sometimes. And I think that's why I appreciate what we have now so much. Liam smiled and leaned against her, and in that moment, Amelia felt the weight of the past lift just a little more. She realized that her journey wasn't just about letting go of pain, it was about embracing the love and joy she had now. That evening, Amelia received another text from Sophia. This one was simple: thank you for giving me a chance. I hope I can continue to prove I've changed. Amelia read the message several times, feeling a sense of calm. She didn't reply immediately, she didn't feel the need to. Sophia's words weren't about seeking forgiveness, they were a step toward her own healing, and Amelia respected that. Was it Sophia? Ethan asked as he entered the room. Amelia nodded. She's trying, she said quietly. And I think that's enough for now. Ethan sat beside her, his hand resting on hers. You've shown her a lot of grace, he said. More than most would. Amelia shook her head. It's not just for her, she said. It's for me too. Carrying resentment, it only weighed me down. Letting it go doesn't mean I've forgotten, but it means I can move forward. Ethan kissed her temple, his voice warm. And you have. More than you realize. As the night deepened, Amelia stood by the window, looking out at the stars. She thought about the journey she had taken, the pain, the struggles, and the moments of clarity that had brought her here. She didn't regret the path she had walked. It had shaped her into the woman she was today, resilient, compassionate, and free. For the first time in years, the memories of Margaret's harsh words and Sophia's cruel actions no longer felt like a weight on her shoulders. They were simply that, memories. She had made peace with them, not by erasing them but by choosing to live beyond them. Amelia turned away from the window and headed to Liam's room, peeking in to see him sleeping soundly. She bent down and kissed his forehead, whispering, "You'll always know love. I promise." Returning to Ethan, who was waiting for her in their cozy living room, Amelia smiled. She curled up beside him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. "I'm happy," she said softly. "Truly happy." Ethan smiled back, pulling her closer. "You deserve it, Amelia. Every bit of it." And as they sat together, surrounded by the quiet hum of their home, Amelia knew that she had not only closed the door on her past but also opened the door to a future filled with love, hope, and unshakable strength. The summer breeze swept gently through the backyard as Amelia Brooks watched her son, Liam, run barefoot across the grass, chasing fireflies under the fading golden sunlight. The glow of the evening softened the edges of her world, leaving a warmth that felt almost tangible. It was moments like this, quiet, simple, and full of love, that reminded her just how far she had come. From the porch, Ethan called out, holding a tray of lemonade. "Liam, don't catch them all. Leave a few for the other kids," he joked, setting the tray on the small table beside Amelia. Amelia chuckled softly, her eyes not leaving her son. "He's so full of life," she said. "Sometimes I think he has more energy in a single day than I've had in years." Ethan sat beside her, his hand finding hers. "He gets that from you, you know," he said. "That unyielding spirit." Amelia smiled, her heart swelling at his words. "It's funny," she said after a moment. "For so long, I thought my strength came from needing to prove something to the people who doubted me, Margaret, Sophia, the rest of the world. But now I see it was never about them. It was always about building this. Us." Ethan squeezed her hand. "And look what you've built," he said. "It's beautiful, Amelia. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real." The weight of his words settled over her, a reminder of how far she had come, not just from the pain of her past, but toward a life of purpose and fulfillment. She had stopped seeking validation from others and had instead found it within herself, in the love she gave and received. Later that evening, as the fireflies faded and the stars began to dot the night sky, Amelia tucked Liam into bed. His sleepy voice broke the silence as she leaned down to kiss his forehead. "Mommy, will you tell me a story?" he asked, his eyes heavy with exhaustion but still hopeful. Amelia hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "How about I tell you a story about a girl who learned to fly," she said, brushing his hair back gently. Liam grinned. "Was she brave?" "She was," Amelia said, her voice soft but steady. "But not at first. At first, she was scared. She didn't think she could fly because people told her she couldn't. But one day, she stopped listening to them and started listening to herself. And do you know what happened?" "What?" Liam whispered, his eyes wide. "She soared," Amelia replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Higher than she ever thought she could." Liam's smile lingered even as his eyes fluttered closed, and Amelia stayed by his side for a moment, her hand resting on his. The metaphor wasn't lost on her, it wasn't just a story for Liam, but a reflection of her own journey. Amelia joined Ethan in the living room, where the soft glow of a lamp cast a cozy light. He looked up from the book he was reading, his expression curious. how's our little adventurer? He asked. Dreaming about flying, I think, Amelia said with a smile, settling beside him. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that spoke of deep understanding and connection. Finally, Amelia broke the quiet. Do you think Margaret and Sophia will ever find peace? She asked, her voice thoughtful. Ethan set the book down, turning his full attention to her. Maybe, he said after a moment. But that's their journey, Amelia. You've given them the chance to change. Whether they take it or not is up to them. Amelia nodded, the truth of his words resonating deeply. I think I've finally accepted that, she said. It's not my job to fix them. I can only control what I do with my life. And you've done so much, Ethan reminded her, his voice full of admiration. You've turned pain into strength, doubt into confidence. You didn't just survive, Amelia, you thrived. She smiled, leaning into him. I used to think happiness was something I had to fight for, she said. But now I know, it's something I choose. And I choose this. Every single day. Ethan kissed her temple, his voice soft but sure. And I'll choose you. Every single day. As the night wore on, Amelia found herself standing by the window, looking out at the stars. For the first time, the memories of her past didn't feel like chains holding her back. Instead, they felt like stepping stones, part of the journey that had brought her here. She didn't need Margaret's approval or Sophia's validation. She didn't need to prove anything to anyone. She had built a life of her own, full of love, resilience, and hope. And that, she realized, was enough. Turning back to the room where her family rested, Amelia smiled to herself. This was her new chapter, one not defined by the shadows of her past, but by the light she had found within herself. She was no longer tethered to what was. She was free to embrace what could be. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains of Amelia's home, casting a warm glow over the kitchen where she stood preparing breakfast. The scent of fresh coffee and pancakes filled the air, blending with the soft hum of birdsong from outside. It was a scene of quiet normalcy, yet to Amelia, it felt extraordinary, a life she had carefully crafted from the ashes of her past. Ethan entered the kitchen, his tie slightly askew as he grabbed a mug of coffee. Big day today, he said with a teasing smile. Are you ready for Liam's first soccer practice? Amelia laughed softly, flipping a pancake. I think he's more ready than I am. He's been practicing his victory dance for a week. Ethan leaned against the counter, his gaze warm. That's your influence, he said. The confidence, the determination, it all comes from you. Amelia smiled, touched by his words. But deep down, she knew it had been a long journey to become the person she was today. There were moments when she doubted herself, times when the shadows of her past threatened to pull her back. But standing here, surrounded by the love she had built, she felt nothing but gratitude. Later that afternoon, as she watched Liam run across the soccer field with unbridled enthusiasm, Amelia felt a wave of emotion. His laughter echoed across the field, unrestrained and full of life. It was a stark contrast to the silence of her own childhood, where joy often felt like a luxury. You okay? Ethan asked, sliding an arm around her shoulders as they sat on the bleachers. Amelia nodded, her eyes fixed on Liam. I'm just proud, she said quietly. Proud of him. Proud of us. And proud that I didn't let my past define what kind of mother I wanted to be. Ethan kissed her temple. You've given him something beautiful, Amelia, a home filled with love and safety. And in doing that, you've proven that your past doesn't have to dictate your future. His words settled over her, a reminder of how far she had come. For so long, she had carried the weight of her mother's criticism and Sophia's jealousy, believing that their voices defined her worth. But now, she saw them for what they were, just voices, echoes of a life she no longer lived. That evening, after tucking Liam into bed, Amelia found herself sorting through an old box of letters and photographs. Among them was a letter from Sophia, sent months after their tentative reconciliation. In it, Sophia had written about her struggles to rebuild her life and her regrets over how she had treated Amelia. Amelia reread the letter, her emotions a mix of sorrow and hope. Sophia was still a work in progress, but she was trying. Margaret, however, had chosen to remain distant, her pride a barrier Amelia had stopped trying to break. It hurt, but it no longer defined her. Some bridges, Amelia realized, were not meant to be crossed. Ethan entered the room, his presence grounding her. "Going through old memories?" he asked, nodding toward the open box. "Just sorting," Amelia said, setting the letter aside. "Sometimes it helps to look back. Not to dwell, but to remember how far I've come." Ethan smiled, sitting beside her. "You've come farther than most people ever dream of," he said. "And you didn't just survive, you thrived." Amelia leaned against him, her heart full. "It's strange," she said after a moment. "For so long, I wanted to fix everything, to fix them. But now, I see that it wasn't my job. I've learned that letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means making space for what truly matters." "And what truly matters?" Ethan asked, his voice soft. She looked at him, her eyes shining. "This," she said simply. "You, Liam, the life we've built. That's all I need." As the night deepened, Amelia stood by the window, looking out at the stars. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the struggles, the heartbreak, and the moments of triumph. Each step had shaped her, not into the person others wanted her to be, but into the woman she had chosen to become. The past no longer haunted her, it was a part of her story, but not the defining chapter. What defined her now was the love she had created, the resilience she had nurtured, and the future she was embracing. With a deep breath, Amelia turned away from the window, ready to rejoin Ethan in their cozy living room. The warmth of their home, the sound of laughter in the halls, and the promise of brighter days ahead, it was more than she had ever dreamed of. As she sat beside Ethan, their hands intertwined, Amelia smiled. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, fully and unapologetically. And for the first time, she felt entirely free. The evening air was still and cool as Amelia Brooks stood on the back porch, a soft breeze carrying the scent of blooming jasmine. The quiet hum of crickets filled the space around her, blending seamlessly with the warmth of the glowing porch lights. Inside, the faint sound of Liam's laughter drifted out, followed by Ethan's low, playful voice. It was a moment of pure contentment, the kind she once thought was beyond her reach. Amelia leaned against the wooden railing, her thoughts drifting to the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the pain of her past, the sharp words, the rejection, the endless need to prove herself to people who would never see her worth. For years, she had carried those burdens, allowing them to dictate her choices and overshadow her happiness. But not anymore. She had chosen to let go. To forgive, not for them, but for herself. Forgiveness, she realized, wasn't about excusing their actions, it was about freeing herself from the weight of resentment. It was about making space for the love and joy she now embraced so fully. Ethan stepped onto the porch, joining her with a quiet smile. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice a gentle reassurance. Amelia turned to him, her smile soft but radiant. "Everything's perfect," she said, and for the first time, she truly meant it. She glanced inside, watching Liam as he scribbled on his drawing pad, his face lit up with excitement. "I used to think happiness was something you found," she murmured. "But it's something you create." Ethan slipped an arm around her shoulders. "And you've created something beautiful," he said. As Amelia rested her head against his shoulder, she looked up at the stars, feeling at peace. This was her life, full, vibrant, and entirely her own. The story of Amelia Brooks delivers a timeless yet deeply relevant message for today's audiences: the power to rise above adversity lies within us. In a world where external validation and societal expectations often cloud our sense of self-worth, Amelia's journey reminds us that true strength is born not from pleasing others, but from believing in ourselves. Her transformation, from a woman weighed down by rejection and pain to one who reclaims her life with confidence and grace, resonates with anyone seeking to break free from the shackles of their past. This is more than a tale of resilience, it's a call to action for anyone struggling to let go of toxic relationships or self-doubt. Amelia's decision to forgive is not about excusing those who hurt her but about liberating herself from the grip of resentment. Her courage to set boundaries while opening her heart to love and hope offers a modern, empowering perspective on healing. At its core, Amelia's story is a celebration of second chances, not just for others, but for ourselves. It's a reminder that happiness isn't something we stumble upon, it's something we create, brick by brick, through intention and authenticity. For anyone yearning to rewrite their narrative, this story inspires hope, courage, and the belief that we are always capable of building a brighter tomorrow.